Take it now!
We begin with breaking news at 11 o'clock and chaos tonight in the nation's capital. Pro-Trump protesters violently clashing with members of D.C.'s Metropolitan Police Department. All of this taking place on Black Lives Matter Plaza just outside the White House. And just hours before the U.S. Senate is set to meet and conduct the official count of the Electoral College ballots from each state. The Electoral College count on Capitol Hill is supposed to be a ceremonial process led by the Vice President that would certify the victory of Joe Biden as the 46th President of the United States. But tomorrow, Republican members of the Senate and the House are expected to object to the tabulation and try to overturn the election. President
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. What happened? Am I on? Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. As you see, the last part of that might have been confusing, but this has happened this morning, mind you. Are we on? Can anybody see anything?
Yeah, the monitor just says
Oh, okay. All right. It's kind of difficult. Anyway, you can see the state of affairs in America today. I don't have a monitor. Anyway, that was Trump burning the house down. You know, this nut has incited a riot, plain and simple. Now, what do we do about all this? Brother Leroy, your favorite person?
You
fighting
asking,
on his way out.
You're asking a spectator what comes to mind. There's a bookstore, a book stand on 127th Street and Malcolm X Boulevard. That's Joe Muhammad's book stand. And on that book stand, he has 3 books by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. One is The Fall of America. The other one is Message to the Black Man and How to Eat to Live. That last one helps people build their immune system. So there are things that are happening now. And one additional thing you get at that book stand is a year ago, Minister Farrakhan had an article in the paper, the front page called The Unraveling. Now, and if that wasn't prophetic along with the books that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad prints, I don't know what else is. And it's not a matter of, hey, my man said this. It's warning our people. We're in very serious times. This thing we're looking at is from a spectator standpoint, but it always was there. He brought it to the surface. And in terms of, you always like to talk about solutions, I go to Kwame Ture, who said, organize, organize, organize. It's a bad time for us not to be a part of a church, to be a part of a lodge, to be a part of a mosque, to be a part of a masjid. Organize and do something, because there possibly is coming a dark time when we won't have the wherewithal to supply our own foods, meaning they can shut down areas. All kinds of stuff is possible now. Also, an event like this, which is negative to us, there are individuals who are looking at the positive side of it, what they can do behind this thing from a legislative standpoint, how they can cut into organizations which would be affecting us. I'm not talking about terrorist organization, but they're called anything that is out of sync with what they plan, a terrorist organization. We have to organize. We have to organize, first of all, last but not least, go to Mary, We have to organize in our families. Our families, we have to make aware of what's going on health-wise. You can't be masked up and still smoking and drinking and eating pig and all that, just pigging out. You just can't do it. It's contrary to your health. So we have to change and we have to organize, individually change and organize. We have to spend our money very wisely. But the family unit is stronger than the individual unit. So I'm saying organize within our family, begin to build bridges. And for young men who are living off their mothers and fathers, stop sucking their parents' blood. Get out and do some work. Get out. That's for us.
It's a hard time to say that.
Get out and do some work. You can wash cars. There are people who have money who want you to do something for them that they wouldn't do for themselves. Sweep the front of the stoop. But be honorable. Stop blood sucking your parents.
Well, that's the last. That's our backup, our parents. Mary, what did you think about this morning? I know it was a shocker.
It was not shocking, but it was so real. And I say that because I rise every morning and I give God the glory. And I say, to God be the glory. And I thank him in my way for being able to know my name, being able to realize that I still have my 5 senses. And I pray and I ask him, whatever comes in my sight, in my presence, that he would give me the strength to be able to have discernment, to know how to go about accepting it, and knowing that this too shall pass, and with faith and trust, we will get through it. With respect to what Brother Leroy has said, and Brother Leroy, I want to thank you for that, because I'm a strong advocate of my belief, and I believe in God, and I believe that God has put us here for a purpose.
Amen.
I believe that the fact that I was born in the United States, under what we claim to be democracy, even with all of the challenges that we have had as my ancestors being black, brought here by slavery, that the key is family. But when we talk about family, I'm not just talking about my blood relatives. I'm talking about the human family. That if the Constitution of the United States was designed to not include all of us as human beings here, and to allow us the freedom to live together in harmony, then we have a problem. For the first time, I'm going to publicly say, President Donald Trump, be an American, be a human, stop it. Stop it. Because the family is important. And if we're talking about democracy, I have family members all around the world that are looking at us who proclaim to be about fairness, righteousness, allowing people to be able to be educated, to be able to have a means of living. This country has done some bad things for many, many years, but that doesn't mean that we have to continue to do that. What it means is that we need to come together. We're not only fighting this situation within ourselves, which a country can't stand if it's divided, and we're being divided on all levels. And then there's one thing that we think that we're in control of, which is this virus. Are we really in control? Have we prayed? Have every person that calls on whomever they call as a higher being prayed and asked God to come and heal this land, to heal us? I don't know. But as far as family is concerned, Brother Leroy, you're right.
Praise be to Allah.
We need to come together as a family. And now I'm talking about personal family. We need to allow our children to grow and to be independent. And there's many things that they can do. They may not be able to go out and get a job 9 to 5, but they can come in and assist the family. And then you can go out into the community, and then you can go out into the world. So I was humbly touched today. But because I believe in God, I know that he will sustain us. And this is just a test.
Well, Dr. Bowles, if we can get you on Skype, I believe we have you there. Now, I saw this as, this was Donald Trump's farewell address. He's saying, hell with America, tear it down, burn the house down, guys. This is the Proud Boys coming out of the woodwork and all the bad guys. You know, Trump just called in his gang. That's right. His gang was allowed into the Capitol because he made it so. He's still the president. He just made a couple of guys and said, just let them in. Let them cut up. And that's exactly what they did. They cut up. Trump is doing nothing but, this is a suicide, just political suicide for him. You let a fool believe he's king, and he'll act like a king. So they allowed him, the Republicans allowed him to act all out of hand, do anything he wanted to do. He's the delusional New York con man. That's what New Yorkers do. When they get, I mean, we're used to conning here in New York. This is a con man's town, always has been. So the richest one in here is Donald Trump. And he's conned his way all his life. So why is anybody, a New Yorker, surprised at what this fool can do? Because he's made himself presence for the last 4 years.
But he's challenged. He challenged the former president, Obama, as to whether or not he was an American. So I'm challenging.
That's because he was a black man.
I'm challenging those that believe in Trump. Do they believe in America?
No.
Because this is not what I understand America is supposed to be about.
This is what they understand America to be. You had 74 million people vote for him. So this is just a smittens of the people that believe in Trump. They believe his lies. You watch watch Fox News. That's a different universe. I mean, a completely different universe. And people out in the Midwest and going along with their lives and making money in the stock market, they're as long as it doesn't touch me, don't raise my taxes, I'm fine. How does that affect my daily life? And the lies that they hear, they don't have alternate universes. Such as, we in New York have a different, this is the center of the universe here in New York. So you survive here and you con people here, you can con people all over the world. And this is exactly what Trump has done. And we sat here and watched it.
I would be, not would be, I am interested in the psychological impact that this has on black folks in America. And I would put that question to Dr. Bowles if she can share that or go to another area of this thing in terms of the psychological impact, the physiological impact on us, and even if she has a view on the impact on Caucasians who are not a part of that thing.
All right, Doctor?
Well, what I see in hearing all these dynamics says to me that in 5 more days, Donald Trump has to leave the White House because that's when Joe Biden gets sworn in. You mentioned very well, Winston, about the 75 million who voted for Donald Trump. They don't go away.
That's right. That's right.
The sentiments that Donald Trump has been able to expose, and notice I say expose, he didn't create it. No. It has always been here.
That's right.
And the question, Brother Leroy, about the effect on America, there has always been the aristocratic approach in white America.
Right.
And I single it out as white America because coming here from Britain, many of the colonial people came with the concept of we are the higher order of people, and they were bringing over indentured slaves before they brought over the chattel slaves. And for those who don't know the difference, indentured were Irish people
Right.
and
That's right.
Right.
Italians, where they worked for 3 to 5 years to pay off what they call the transport costs to
Right.
get from their country to this new world.
Right.
And once they had paid off this fee, then they then could consider themselves colonial people or pilgrims. Now, the chattel slavery, there was no conditioning. They were saying you are subservient people. You're being brought over as livestock. For those who do not know it, a hog, a pig, and a black African was written up in the will. So a father could will a black slave to his daughter or son. The United States taxed the African person like they tax land and livestock.
Right.
So once we know the historical perspective, now, these many years later, there are still people who hold on to that thinking that a black man can never be equal to a white person.
That's
And
Donald
then,
Trump.
like they would put a dog on a leash, or they would mandate or decide what a dog eats and what vaccination the dogs get. They would see that as okay treatment for black people. So once you have that understanding historically, it's not a surprise when you see this much anger and this much venom when there's an effort for a black person in America to say, I am a human. You should treat me with the same respect as everyone else. They very strongly do not agree. This isn't new. What is new is that it is more obvious.
Yeah.
And second to that, the world is looking. Mary, you made the point, which I think is very astute. United States have always paraded before the world as an example.
Yes.
Right.
It was, look at me, I'm Democratic, look at me, my people are free, look at me, look at me. But while shouting that, they were hiding the ugly parts.
Yes.
If you look in the 1930s and 1940s, and the reason I bring that up, we're looking at World War II, we're looking at black pilots, you're looking at black servicemen, you're looking at Ms. Baker, the dancer, you're looking at jazz, you're looking at flute. As the spillover of black talent became recognized worldwide is when Jim Crow and a lot of the very harsh lynchings occurred. Because as the world started to see the contributions of black people, slave descendants, the white aristocratic head was again raised. Segregation was enforced harsher, and in the southern states, lynching, Ku Klux Klan, Jim Crowism, eugenics. I mean, keep in mind, eugenics, which was the sterilization of what they considered substandard humans, did not end until 1972.
That's right.
And eugenics
That started with Hitler.
Well, that's why. Well,
Before.
Hitler trained in America.
I
Yes.
never heard that before.
Yes. No, we need to talk about it.
What?
Harvard University, Cold Spring Harbor, all of the now renowned universities, they would teach in the higher education institutions that white people were supreme.
Right.
There were measuring the head diameter of others.
Right.
They
Yeah.
talked about the skull shape.
Right.
That's the concept of race was so sternly introduced. Whatever Harvard said was law. So if you were a well-educated person and you went through the Ivy League schools in the 20s and the 1920s and 1930s, you were taught you are superior by your genetic makeup.
Right.
And that people of color were inferior by their genetic makeup. So it is not so long ago that it was just general acceptance. I like watching some of the older movies, and I was watching, I guess, a 1939 movie all of the drama and the aristocratic behavior of the rich white. Just look at how the actresses and actors behaved and the type of hotels that were in California and New York. They were imitating what is the British world.
British. That's right.
And they were actually looked upon as a special class. Look how John F. Kennedy and his brother went after Marilyn Monroe. All of this is elite class, aristocratic class. But my point to be made is, instead of tearing this down over time, it has been secreted. That if you go to a wealthy hotel, and I've been to a few in Miami, north of Miami, that behavior is still there. You have so many people rushing to take your suitcase, so many people who will make your bed, turn down your bed, put mitts on your pillow. That is considered high-end treatment, but it's also consistent.
Royalty.
Yes, of royalty who have enslaved people doing their bidding.
That's right.
So we take every opportunity to imitate that aristocratic thinking here in America. Look at the black folk, and I just shake my head when they're busy talking about debutante balls and the coming out of young men and the coming out of young women. I'm saying that was introduced in Britain back in the 1800s. You're trying to, the girls get on these elaborate dresses and parents spend this elaborate amount of money. This is still quite popular in Louisiana, South Carolina, and other southern states. And it is adopted by fraternity and sorority people in these United States among the blacks. So we
That's
can
called
get
success.
when you see the whites acting in this manner, but we are silent when we see our own black people imitating the aristocratic traditions. So, Brother Leroy, to answer your question, how does it affect us? We act schizophrenic anyway. It's okay today in this context and not okay tomorrow in that context. There is no direct.
Well, we're brainwashed to feel that way, by the society and coming up in America. I remember in the 50s, the way we were raised to become corporate execs, right?
That's right.
And
We
the
dressed
50s,
that way.
And I managed to reach that by the time I was 30. I was in the corporate game, and I had reached my successful goal. That was my ambition as a kid.
And then, and Dr. Bowles, you're absolutely correct, because you just sent me flashback into the 50s. And as I stated before, my mom was an American and my dad was British. And even though he was
that's
from
right.
the islands, we had a tradition, and we did participate in the cotillions. We participated with that. And we were taught to dress a certain way, even with our church. And I'm from Harlem, born and raised in Harlem.
That's where
And there
we
was
were
a
raised.
certain level of,
Dignity.
how can I say, yes, aristocrats. We considered ourselves to be of a certain status. So we dressed a certain way,
That's
and we
right.
had high tea. And Christmas, I still have my tea set that was given to me when I turned 10.
Dr. Bowles, my experience is, my name is Winston Gilchrist. And when I was a youngster, I sort of played the role of Winston Gilchrist. That's where we were, and Cary Grant was my favorite actor. I mean, this is the brainwashing of the 50s.
No, I'm trying to stop that.
She's-
It's not so much brainwashing.
Well, you're a Southerner, so.
I disagree with the concept of brainwash. We imitate what we see.
See,
Right.
exactly.
People were brought here without heritage.
Yes.
I didn't see what my great-great-great-great-grandmother's traditions were. I didn't
Exactly.
see my great-great-great-grandfather's traditions. So when we imitate, that is a human characteristic.
Okay.
Yes.
We imitate, and that's how we learn. The sad part of this discussion is what I go back, something Brother Leroy said. The examples for us and our history was stolen from us.
Okay.
And for the various Muslim traditions in the U.S. have tried to restore some of that heritage, there are those who don't embrace it. So it's not a brainwashing. Brainwashing is someone intentionally trying to convince you to behave a certain way. Black people are doing it voluntarily. You see someone who is faring well,
Right.
and you want to fare well also, you imitate them.
Right.
So our behavior, I don't accept the role of victim. No one brainwashed me. I saw what I wanted to be like, and I imitated that behavior. The sad thing is, Black Americans have too few examples of how to be non-aristocratic and yet Black proud.
Exactly. Now you've touched it.
That is not brainwashing. That is exposure. That is
Right.
clarity. That
That's
is
right.
understanding.
That's
I
right.
was talking to my sister recently, and one of the things when there were other Black children who wanted to make fun of the, it was in North Carolina, in Shelby, North Carolina, the Hunt family, they would say, oh, they talk all proper.
Right.
And I
Right.
said, we felt a bit offended at that comment. What is wrong with talking proper?
Yes.
Talking white.
Yes, that was what was said in her.
Their understanding was if you were articulate or
Right.
if you had academic, prowess,
Right.
you were acting white.
Right.
So what does that say? That says their concept of being Black was speaking poorly and having
Right.
no academic achievement.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
not brainwashing, that is perspective.
Yes.
And we as a people have accepted the bottom perspective. There was a friend of mine who was saying she was ready to fight when she was in school if someone called her a nigger. And the teacher took her aside and said, why does that make you angry? And she was trying to explain why it made her angry. And the lady said, if that's not your name, why do you respond to it?
Right.
And you think about that, it's such a logical thing. If someone said Mary, I would sit there quietly because my name is not Mary.
Exactly. You would not respond.
Well,
Exactly.
That's a difficult one there. Those are fighting words in my day. I
Right.
mean, you can get.
But-
I
but-
couldn't get past that one.
But taking
When I was
that,
in the Marine Corps, I had a terrible time with that. I mean, nobody could say it around me. The time I got in an incident, I went crazy. I mean,
Right.
I couldn't hurt the guy enough. You know what I mean? And he was calling somebody else the N-word. But I mean, that's a psychosis that we develop over the years.
No, Winston, I'm trying to stop you from that.
Right.
Don't give it a label. This is not brainwashing. This
No.
is not
This
psychosis.
is behavior.
This is behavior.
yes.
Okay.
If I may, let me just come in with this. In terms of what's happening right now, if you look at the crowds that are out there with the protests, they're mocking the behavior of the leader that called them
That's
out
right.
there.
That's
They're
right.
maskless, they're rude, and they're being disrespectful. And what is their motive? Because they do not want to accept the fact that the election is over, that it was fair. So they are buying into the attitude and the behavior of the person that has called it.
That's right.
So there's a difference because they can make a choice. And that's why I'm saying if they were to really sit down and think, if we're in a democracy and we've had a fair election and we're now fighting with a virus, we're fighting with all kinds of things, climate change, viruses.
Right.
There's so much. Our children are not being educated on the level that they should have been. So we're fighting horribly. So just based on going back to being an aristocrat, I had to pull down on some of that I've learned in terms of just with my grandchildren, in terms of educating. My mother and grandmother couldn't go to school.
Right.
They weren't allowed. They couldn't read and write here in America.
Right.
So I fought for my children to be educated. That was that was all I knew, and that was all my parents knew, was to get an education, So right now we need to focus. And Leroy, you're right. The family needs to focus. We need to gather together. If we can't control what's happening at the Capitol, we sure can control what's happening in our homes.
Okay.
We need to put our foot down and we need to say, okay, we can't do anything about that right now, but we're going to make sure you get an education. And if you don't have that laptop to be able to do that homework, we're going to sit there. We're going to find you someone.
Right.
This is what you're saying when you're calling on the churches and you're calling on the fraternities and all of these other organizations that we belong to. It's not all politics. Right now, all we're focused on is the politics. And if we continue to look for a handout, all we're going to get is what they hand out.
That's
And if
right.
they're handing out garbage to us, that's all we're going to get.
Well, I think right now, with Trump displaying all his ugliness, we have a chance to really change it all.
Yes.
We have a new beginning. It's a new year, but it can be a new frontier. We have a chance right on this show to develop a system where we're appealing to the human family, not color or style or aristocrat or low, but the human family.
Yes.
And that there's one race, the human race.
Yes.
So this is our appeal, and one of these problems that's affecting the human race is the virus.
Yes.
The virus doesn't know color. All
I
right?
was-
So that's why we have you here, Doc, and you're going to lead us to how we deal with this problem. And I'm going to start by showing the roll-in you sent me on the long haulers.
Before
right.
you do that, Winston, may I address a comment
Of
that
course.
Mary made?
Yes.
Of course.
Mary, you mentioned family and you talked about what the family can do to make sure that our generation of children are not lost educationally. When we're looking at all of the decisions made about the virus and all of the comments on how to keep your family safe, no one is mentioning what could protect us better than the vaccine. And what Winston's referencing on long haulers we'll talk about, but when you're saying if we're doing a human race and you're doing a shout out saying protect your family, it needs to start with clarity so we can have unity.
Yes.
The vaccine is not, hear me clearly, is not a protecting agent in itself.
That's correct.
The vaccine stimulates the body to produce antibodies.
Okay.
That's correct.
Every person cannot produce antibodies,
Okay.
but there is an alternative to vaccine for those people, and that is a monoclonal antibody. Monoclonal antibodies are made in the lab just like you make a vaccine.
Okay.
And someone will say, well, what is proof of concept? Every time a newborn baby suckles a mother's breast, that baby is receiving antibodies, which are passive immunity. So what would make more sense and would allow people to congregate among their family and even go to church is if they were giving the choice of taking monoclonal antibodies while others were taking vaccines. The way this is being done is all or none. You get a vaccine or you get fired, or you take the vaccine and you this and that. There should be choices given because there are choices existing. So anyone in a senior citizen setting who may not have the ability to launch an immune response, giving them a vaccine shot means nothing.
That's right.
They cannot launch that immune response. But if they were given monoclonal antibodies or convalescent antibodies, they would have a window of 3 months, 2 to 3 months, where they would be, the word I'm trying, immune. They would be immune to the virus. So had we as Americans wanted them to have a blessed Christmas or blessed Thanksgiving, we could have administered monoclonal antibodies and allowed the 80-year-old, 90-year-old person in a nursing home to receive the kisses of their loved ones or sit at the table at Thanksgiving and know that they were protected. But we're looking at almost more 350,000 deaths when there are alternative processes talking about warp speed development of a vaccine, okay, great, no problem, I have no negative comment. But why not also develop your monoclonal antibodies for the senior citizen, for the Black people with comorbidities, for the persons who have hypersensitivities to any kind of injection? There's no reason for a single approach when there are alternative multiple approaches that can be taken that is not just protective but life-saving. Vaccine does not prevent infection.
That's
Doctor,
right.
how
It
do we
doesn't.
do this? How can we do this? These
Every time I
monoclonal.
come on is that institutions like Howard, Tuskegee, any of my Black HBCU medical school training facilities have both the capacity, the knowledge, and the capability of doing monoclonal antibodies. Harvard is not the only institution in the United States.
Why,
Johns Hopkins is not the only one, but we act like it.
why aren't we doing it?
I don't know why the HBC's pride does not push them into the forefront. That hearing that 70+% of the people dying in New Orleans back in February were Black caused me to just get irate. I was looking for every radio show, every television show. I was
Nothing's there.
writing papers, I was sending letters, because it doesn't have to happen in the 21st century.
Well, how can we get, well, doctor,
Why
doctor,
don't they? I would ask you, Winston, turn your question to your camera and ask them, why aren't you?
Yes, exactly. Ask the
I guess they
question.
don't know. That's why we have you here, and I want to know how we can get this started.
No. The Black people of America are intelligent people, Winston.
Yes.
Okay.
I am not the
Yes.
smartest doctor in the world. They know what I know.
Well,
I-
they're
I
not
have
telling
to-
me like you are.
No,
You're the smartest doctor I know.
I have to agree. I have to agree with Dr. Bowles.
But you're the smartest doctor I know. So,
I have to. But
It should not
so
be-
I've got the COVID, doc, I mean, if I get the COVID, you're the first one I'm coming to.
Winston, you need to ask the question to the people who can answer it.
And I think that what I think that Dr. Bowles is saying is that this is a forum, and it goes back to my point earlier on, that if we have to be in pre-kindergarten, we're in pre-kindergarten. So put the question out to everyone. We have people that are running for office. It should be on their platform. Why aren't those that are involved in any form of health, any form of any hospitalization, medical, anything, pharmacy, why aren't they addressing all of the alternatives? Why are they not talking to us? Just like how every morning you get up and you listen to, here in New York, you're listening to the mayor of the city of New York and you're listening to the governor, and they're making comments like, we want that vaccine
Yeah.
in everybody's
Yeah.
arm, not in the refrigerator. But they're not talking about the alternatives. Has anyone said to them that there are alternatives and that they should be talking to us about them? This is why I come on this show. This is why I'm here. Because everybody that listens to this show, trust me, they go back and they ask questions. We're not in any conspiracy. We're not anti anything. All we're saying is open up the door, give us the facts, and allow us to have a choice.
Right.
Bring it to the table. So you can't sit in a health forum and not talk about an alternative if you're talking about COVID. Talk about something. And we're still dying. And now this second strain is out there. In our show 3 or 4 weeks ago, we talked about the fact that there was going to be another strain. This was talked about. Dr. Bowles mentioned that to us. But the average person had no idea.
Right.
So we're not making up anything. We're telling the facts.
Right.
So right now there's Zoom meetings, there's city council runnings, there's all kinds of people that are running for office. And I put it to them. I put it to Mark Levine. We've put it to National Action. And we put it to these people that are running for office that have the wherewithal to reach the ears of the people that are in medicine.
Well,
We're not saying don't get the vaccine, but what we're saying that if you can't get it, what are the alternatives for those people that are not getting it?
May I say this, that what comes to mind, based on what Dr. Bowles has said, look at the camera. There are people in the audience. I got to make this feeling, not assumption, I don't like to do assumption, that there are people in the audience who are connected with Harlem Hospital, with Lincoln Hospital, all right? Why can't those hospitals, why can't the medical director be spoken to and ask the question of why not begin to accumulate convalescent serum or therapy? That they're right in the community. So their doctors or our own selves going to the medical director, to the director of the hospital, all they can do is say no. And if they say no, they got to give a reason for it.
But Dr. Bowles, I believe you told me that they are doing that. They are collecting these antibodies.
You misunderstood. What I have told you, and even to Brother Leroy, there are very specific groups selectively taking serum.
Okay.
February in 2020, the FDA, working with Mayo Clinic, had a number of blood banks that was selectively taking serum.
That's what I remember. Okay.
Do you think it was for you, Winston? Let me tell you, it wasn't. It was for Donald Trump. It was for Giuliani. So I'm talking about, if this is going to be a treatment, it should be open to the public. And if the purpose is to save lives, it should be given to the persons who need it most.
Exactly.
So, is it done? I mean, that's special treatment. Certainly there's somebody doing it somewhere, but it's not for you.
And
It's
that's
not for me.
So we need to approach whichever, who's the most likely to go along with this that you would appeal to?
Well, you're missing it. It's not a go along with thing. What is the problem? The problem is institutional racism, is what I talked about, I guess, 2 or 3 shows again. Right now in these United States,
Okay.
decisions concerning the health of most people, particularly those who have low income or who have no insurance, the decisions are not made with the focus on your health.
right.
The decisions are made with the focus on cost.
Right.
So consequently, if you have no insurance or you're going to a very rural hospital or a small town clinic, what medications allowed for you to be administered are on a list called a formulary. And the formulary is chosen by a committee of people. The people on that committee do not have to be physicians.
Okay.
So translating that, Winston, you can have the smartest doctor in the world located in a rural clinic of the United States who can only practice medicine to the extent the formulary allows.
Ah, I remember
Right.
that. Yeah,
Yes.
right.
So if
okay.
I know that I can fix you better with medicine A,
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
and the
Okay.
hospital doesn't allow me to
That's
write
right.
that prescription for medicine A, you, the patient, will not receive it.
That's right.
Right. Right.
That's right.
So
That's right.
we need to go to Joe Biden with all this, and maybe we can start something.
Well, my comment is the same as it was 3 months ago, that if the objective is to stop the deaths of people, in this case is COVID-19, but it can be anything else. As you showed on one of your shows, Winston, President Obama was describing the potential of a pandemic.
Right.
COVID-19 is just one of many
of them.
possibilities, and the people need to come to that realization. We act as if this is a single thing, that, gee whiz, America messed up with COVID-19. Well, guess what? If we don't put some things in place, these kinds of mess ups can reoccur over and over and over. And who will be the survivors? The ones who have the money.
Yes.
So it's planned genocide.
Yes. Well, it's pretty much that. If I may, one of the things that I've noticed just listening to the talk show, the presentations that are being done by, again, in New York City from the mayor and the governor, is that if you go back to the beginning of some of their talks, one of the things that the governor made known to me is that he was not aware of the different layers of the democracy that existed in the hospital system. He was not aware, and that was because he was trying to get ventilators, and he was trying to understand why is it that one hospital, private hospital, public hospital, quasi hospitals, how come what was the disparity? How was it so different? And like right now, he's even put out something that his motive in his mind right now, all they want is to get this vaccine into the arms of people. And I said that earlier, and I'm going to say it again. Why? Because that's what their mission is. Their mission is not about looking at this point of telling us on a broader base that there are alternatives to getting relief with the COVID. They're not going to tell us that. So what they've done is they've looked at what they have. And they've also gone to the point to say that they will fine a hospital if that hospital cannot get rid of those vaccines by a certain time. They will fine them for it, and then they will close them out from the program. But the question becomes, what if that hospital is already functioning on a managerial basis at a lower level? They're functioning like that all the time. They've been like that. And those are the hospitals that are in our communities. Those are the clinics that are in our communities. So what he's saying, he will remove the vaccine from them and give it to a hospital. And if you looked at that list, the private hospitals are at the top because they are usually the most highly staffed. So they have the managerial skills to do, or they have a different personality, a different outlook on the patients that they're dealing with, a difference of a mannerism for where the location of the hospital is, that community. So again, if that happened, who's going to fall to fault? We will. So now they're talking again. They're still not talking about alternative medicines. If it was not for this show, we would not have even understood what antibodies are. And every now and then you will see it come across the screen of late. And there's a fee to get your antibody test. There's no fee to get the COVID test. Okay? So we have to pay attention. Again, this show is important because it does wake up the people. And even though we may not realize they're being woken, they are. They are awake, and they're not going to give credit. And I said it before, they don't want a coin that is coming from this level. They don't want us to be as instrumental as we possibly can in educating the people. And that's why it goes back to the family. Another thing that they're not talking about, they did not make this vaccine for young people because they didn't test it on young people. They don't know what the outcome will be on a child 12 or 11 or 10 or 9. But they're not talking to us about that. So what if your child is getting COVID? What's the number of children right now in New York City that have been diagnosed with COVID? You don't hear those numbers. How many have died? You don't hear that because they're not ready to address us in the way that we should be addressed. So I hear it, and the only thing that I know at this point in time with the tools that I have is to keep talking, remind people, tell everybody I know, watch the show, whether you agree with it or not, do your homework, ask the questions. The other thing about even getting a blood test, you go and you get the blood test and they're taking all your blood. Did anybody ever tell you whether you had the antibodies? Does anybody tell you about your deficiency on vitamin D? Is anybody telling you anything? No.
Well, you know,
Well, Mary, keep in mind.
Doc, we need to cover the long haulers before we leave. So,
Okay, I'm approaching it now, Winston. Mary, to keep in mind, the Tuskegee experiment was exactly as you described. People went for 40 years and got blood tests, and the whole purpose was for the information to be recorded, and they watched the people get rotted from within.
Yes.
Without understanding the whys and how comes, we are victim, and we become no more than a data point.
And
The comment on long haulers that the last international webinar was on, which I think was on Sunday, the conversation is America has not monitored COVID-19 in a way that allows them to talk about long haulers.
Exactly.
They're in New York, the hospital, there's Mount Sinai is following, and they have well over 10,000 people that's coming in. If you remember with HIV, they did what was called viral load. Many of the doctors internationally are saying COVID-19 should not just be said, yes, you're positive or no, you're negative. It should be saying this is your viral load.
Yes.
High viral load gives you high infectivity, and it may also contribute to the severity of your illness. People who go from high viral load to low viral load, but they never eradicate it, those are your long haulers. We are not defining the population because we've never looked at viral load as one of the indices to monitor.
So that's what I'm saying. There's an article that was posted by the Amsterdam News pertaining to similar trials that took place with other vaccines, but not here in the United States, but in Africa. And they did not monitor it. I don't want to misspeak, so I'm going to hold off, but it's in the Amsterdam News, and it may have been during the Christmas edition. And they give a back history on how much Pfizer really knew about this, what they were doing, and they knew it was wrong, but they did it anyway, and a lot of people died. I'm going to pull back on that, but I will bring it to have it, you can look at it and see what it's all about. So this is like the norm for them. So they'll get sued for something that they did, and they'll pay for the lawsuit and move on.
Mary, they gave all of the vaccine developers immunity.
Yes.
There is
So you can't sue them.
Suing those who did the warp speed. So Winston, if you want to show the long haulers, I think your listeners and watchers may be interested.
Okay, would you run item 2, please?
But while they're getting that set up, Mary, you're absolutely right that children or anyone under the age of 16 it is not recommended for them to get the vaccine. So if we know we are intentionally leaving a population out, but yet they got to go to school, why aren't we offering the monoclonal antibodies to them?
That's what I'm saying. And again, the
gotta go
only
this-
way that we would know how to do this is we have to go to kindergarten.
And now
we
new
just went to
research on the
kindergarten.
devastating long-term effects some experience with COVID-19. More than 1 million Americans could have symptoms for weeks or even months after contracting the virus. ABC's Ariel Reshev takes a look at post-COVID treatment centers and community groups popping up across the country to help these so-called long haulers.
For new mom Reina Lopez, her 100-day battle with COVID-19 has been a protracted,
100
brutal
days.
nightmare.
I had a fever, I had chills, I would get very dizzy and lightheaded when I would, any movement, sitting down, standing up, just turning my head, I was getting nauseous, my body was hurting. I thought I was just gonna go in for a few days and then go back home, but I was asleep most of the time. So I don't remember any of that part, I was just dreaming.
The disease sending the 31-year-old to a Tempe, Arizona hospital back in June, just released at the end of October after months in the ICU on a ventilator, isolated from her newborn baby Noah, her 2 older daughters, and her husband Rodolfo.
Our life got flipped upside down, we have 3 kids. My 4-year-old kept asking, where's mommy, and I had to, told her, she's sick and she's fighting.
Like many of the 11 million Americans infected with the virus, Reina is a so-called long hauler.
Just focus on that breathing in and slow.
Still experiencing symptoms days or even months after testing negative for the disease.
Are you also dealing with, any of the symptoms of COVID-19 still?
I still am on oxygen. I try not to be as much, that way I can get my lungs stronger, but my taste completely changed. So there's a lot of foods that I don't eat anymore, that they were my favorite. I do get headaches and I am on a lot of medication, so that's overwhelming itself.
According to recent studies, an estimated 10% of people diagnosed with COVID will go on to become long haulers. That means more than 1 million Americans potentially experiencing debilitating symptoms well after overcoming the virus itself. The alarming phenomenon prompting the creation of post-COVID care centers from coast to coast to treat patients suffering long-term effects.
shortness of breath, bouts of tachycardia or rapid heartbeats that's unexplained. You have patients with cognitive dysfunction, difficulty concentrating, having very bad fatigue, and also patients who are very deconditioned, just maybe from quarantine or maybe just from the illness itself.
Dr. Zijen Chen is the director of the Mount Sinai Post-COVID Care Center in New York City, the first of its kind in the country. It was launched in May as the city was still reeling from the apex of the virus.
Many of these patients admitted to the hospital, they needed some sort of follow-up. I mean, these were very, very sick patients, many of them in the ICUs. And because of that, we wanted to make sure that when they went home, that they had a good landing place and that we're continuing their care.
And with the tidal wave of COVID cases across the nation, demand for post-disease care is exploding.
I think what the centers do is they act as a place where patients can go to learn about their symptoms and get treatment so that they're not seeking care from everywhere, including the hospitals.
Hi everyone, this is day 8 of my Corona journal.
46-year-old Long Island, New York, mom of 2, Diana Barrett, is a coronavirus survivor. While in quarantine back in March, she says she felt starved for information about what the virus was doing to her body.
I went into isolation in one world and I came out to a very, very different world. And while I was in isolation, it gives you a lot of time to think, and you have a novel virus and you have no information whatsoever.
So she founded Survivor Corps, a nationwide group of COVID survivors who crowdsource their firsthand knowledge of life after COVID. The group's Facebook page now has nearly 120,000 members, sharing experiences, advice, and support. Many fighting long-term COVID symptoms report feeling anxious or depressed. Diana says her community helps survivors feel a little less alone.
Sometimes you just need to talk to somebody who understands what you're going through, and Survivor Corps offers that. And, it's unfortunate that there was no institutional system to play that role, but, where there doesn't exist something, you have to create it.
And the group also helping researchers examine trends in the long hauler population. A recent survey by Survivor Corps and Indiana University School of Medicine found that fatigue is the most common of the top 50 symptoms experienced by long haulers, followed by muscle and body aches, shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, and difficulty concentrating. And according to Mount Sinai Health System,
City Planning Commission, and she told
We
me
only
that
have a minute to go, so we got to cut that.
done it if she had realized how
Doc,
much work it was going to be.
that was a great roll-in. I'm sorry we didn't start it earlier. Would you cut the video?
Yeah, and Vito's complaint after she got on the City Planning Commission.
Can you cut
was
the
that she
video?
stopped ironing her shirts. I mean, well, that was Vito.
We only have 30 seconds left. But Dr. Bowles, this has been fascinating as usual, and we have to talk more, so we got to do another show.
Yes.
Well, we're going to let this one get around because I thought it was fascinating. You're always fascinating, and we appreciate you being here with us. And God bless you, and stay the angelical figure that you are to me. You're the smartest doctor I know. God bless. Power to the people, to Manhattan out. God in me loves the God in you. Got a minute more for the Bronx.
One other point for Dr. Bowles, that I think that we should stress the fact that if you did get vaccinated, it does not stop you because they don't know. It does not stop you from possibly being a spreader immediately after having been vaccinated. It doesn't stop you. No one knows. So just because you went and got the vaccine, don't think that you're safe and you don't have to do anything, because you can be highly contagious for other people. Okay, and that's why I think they put it into more than one dosage.
All right. Doc, we're almost out. We only have 15 seconds. God bless you and power to the people. And we'll stay in tune. We'll be in touch with you very shortly. God bless, and to all our viewers, pay attention. Stay safe, and God be with you. Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Wow. That was,